Welcome back to part 2 of Fix the Money, Fix the Gold. So if you haven't watched part 1, please go back and watch that. I broke all this down. And where we left things off was we were going to write a check, or somebody was going to write a check, to pay off all of these debts, the household debt, the U.S. debt, the M2 debt, replace the currency, replace it all with this giant check of $75 trillion. And the debts that are on the books will be replaced with 0%, because that new currency, when it's introduced, it will replace this garbage stuff with this $100 bond backed by some gold. I'm not going to get the dime back out, but you get the idea. You've seen that video. So why would anybody do that? First of all, I've gone over the Genius Act and the stable coins in previous videos, but I'll recap briefly for you who haven't seen it. The idea is that while the dollar is not holding its purchasing power very well for Americans, it is still the best currency, fiat currency on the planet for many, many people. And many people still want it because in their own native countries, they can't get the dollar. So from Canada to Mexico to Argentina to Greece to Africa and Australia, they would rather save their currencies. If they're saving, let's say they save pesos, they'd rather save dollars than pesos. So if you make stable coins, which is a digital dollar, so you write off this, and then you have this new dollar that's out there, and you're going to replace it with dollars that are only going to make 0%. There's going to be two aspects that are going to make this sellable. One, it's a better currency than the rest of the world gets exposed to for much of the countries. So people will sell their pesos and lira and euros to get into this. Second, and I'll get into the mechanism of this too. Second, when you get into DeFi, there are different ways and mechanisms that are beyond the scope of this video to make interest if you're involved in DeFi. And I know that our president's family is involved in this, and we're working on that already as well. So that's that whole world financial, the DeFi, this is basically moving banks from physical on your corner to go to your Wells Fargo or your Chase, but you're only allowed to what's available, right? That's all you're exposed to. Now we're going to have lots and lots of other banking opportunities online, which is going to be your DeFi, your decentralized finance, and all those banking institutions will be out there competing to create new loans, because that's part of the problem right now is that money's not moving. Currency is not moving because banks aren't lending. There's not small business loans. We've reduced the number of banks that are in the system in the last several years. We basically cut it in half. We're now less than 5,000 banks in the U.S. It used to be over 10,000. And the reason that's a problem is because the banks are the ones that generate the currency. They inject that liquidity into the market by making small business loans, making car loans, making home equity loans that aren't happening right now. And a lot of people don't want to borrow because the rates are too high. That's why the administration is saying lower the rates. So now they're going to do an end run around the Federal Reserve and the existing banking system, go directly to decentralized finance, sell stablecoin dollars digitally to the entire globe, and replace the system. Now, what's fair? How do we get rid of all this debt, and what is fair? And of course, the sun comes out. Now I'm getting glare. Hopefully you not. So that should be okay. Let's move this in. I'll move it in. I'll move it a little bit. There we go. Well, you get the idea. So what's fair? It's fair to everyone that if you took out a loan for, say, $10,000, $20,000, $100,000, you should have to repay it. But what's killing people is paying it with interest. And that's what's also hurting the U.S. government. Now, interest is one of the biggest payments for the U.S. government. If that goes to 0%, that saves about $1 trillion, I believe, for the United States. So if they had $37 trillion, 1% of that is 0.3 cents. So 3% of that is over $1 trillion. Right now, if we refinance the debt, and we have to refinance often, it would be 5%, which would be about almost $2 trillion, like 1.85 trillion. That's a lot of trillions that could be used for a better purpose. So if we can magically write this check to nullify all this debt, okay, just get it off the books, then we can go to 0%, and then the houses that owe whatever they owe, they can go to 0%, which will make payments much easier, and it will have more liquidity, more cash that people will be able to spend into the marketplace. Now, who's going to pay the price for this? The banks. Okay, the banks are going to be the ones that are hurt with this because they're going to be asked to accept this new $100 bill backed by a little bit of gold in lieu of $1. So they're going to have to take 100 of these for one of these. Now, that may sound like magic, and I don't know if that they're going to buy that, but understand who created this currency in the first place, which was the banks. They made these loans, and they got paid for it because they sold the loans as soon as they were created. So while this will hurt the banking system, we need to get out of the debt slave system, which is the Federal Reserve System, and all the banks that are on the marketplace right now, get to more competitive finances and get into a deflationary environment where when we get more production, things go down in price. That's how things happened between the Civil War and World War I, when we were the most affluent country and we were growing like crazy. We didn't have a central bank. We were making progress. We had industrial revolution, more tools, more benefits, more modernization, and we were producing more stuff every year for less labor, which made, even though the wages stayed the same, you could buy more stuff. And that's the way it's going to be if they go to a system that's backed by hard money. Now, to wrap this up again, and please, watch this again, watch both parts again, leave a question if you don't understand. I know it's complicated. I've been studying this for years, and as more and more pieces come together, I start to see the whole complex vision. This is one of the craziest puzzles that you'll ever understand. Try to understand the financial system. They don't want you to understand it. That's part of the trap. But we're trying to get out of it. And I think by 2026, we have a path out with this new $50 bond. As long as we confirm how much gold is in Fort Knox, we can say, all right, this is backed by that little sliver of gold, so that 100 trillion of these in 50 years is equal to the amount of gold that's in Fort Knox. Now, can we add to that? Can we create more wealth? Sure. We have gross domestic product. We have more production, more manufacturing will come back to the United States, but we also have more natural resources. We have silver. We haven't even talked about that. We got a lot of silver. Silver, I think it's like about 10 to 1, roughly. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's like 10 ounces of silver for every ounce of gold. It might be 15 to 1. It varies, but the price doesn't reflect that. So regardless, we've got more than just gold. We've got silver, we've got oil, we have Bitcoin, we have other things, we have the real estate, all these things that are valuable that we could tokenize, put in the blockchain, put it on there and put a value to it, and let the marketplace decide how much it's worth and how much of these things you would trade for it. So now we would have even more value behind this stuff. So I've said a lot in these 2 videos. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. I still have a few too. But this is how I see all this happening in less than a year. In a year's time, I believe that this 50-year bond, I don't have it written down, but here's my example. The 50-year bond backed by that little sliver of gold, which, you get the idea. But the gold is backing this. This is going to be more powerful than this stuff. And once this is created as legal tender, the banks will have to take it. And if they say that as part of legal tender, that these bonds, 100 of these are equivalent to one of these, now all of a sudden, all that debt gets wiped out very quickly, and then we can be replaced for 0%. And you could still, if you owe $50,000, would you rather pay $50,000 a loan back or $50,000 plus interest? I think I know what answer I would give, but that seems like the most fair thing to do. And I think this is how the system is going to go. So, got the glare back, got the videos done. Looking forward to your questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.